blood pythons really do have a bad reputation. In this video, we're gonna talk about if they actually deserve that reputation though. Stick around. My name's Pierce LaValle, this is Pierce's Planet, and let's do it. Yo, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody is doing amazing. I know I am doing amazing because it is my birthday.
Hey, yay, yay, it's your birthday. Hey, 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 it's your day. It's not Monday, it's not Tuesday, it's not Wednesday, it's not Thursday, it's not Friday, it's not Saturday, it's not Thursday. It's your birthday.
Well, actually, I'm filming this the day before my birthday. I don't think it's gonna drop the day of my birthday, but it'll probably drop the day after my birthday. But we're just gonna consider this a birthday episode anyways. The reason why I decided to do this video today around the time of my birthday is because around this same time last year is when I first got my blood python Cleopatra, who you see right here. So around this time marks about a year that I have been owning a blood python. And so I thought that today would be a perfect day to kind of do a blood python video and to kind of give you guys a care guide and show you guys what I do to take care of Cleopatra here. Now, when I got her, she was already about 4 months old. So really she is about a year and a half old. To start off, we're gonna just kind of talk about kind of the history of blood pythons. Blood pythons, they come from Southeast Asia. They come from the islands of like Borneo and Sumatra. They come from very, very warm, tropical, and wet climates. These snakes are unique because their girth, they're going to get the size, like they get a big size around width-wise, but length-wise, not so much. They probably only get about 5 feet at the most. Big, like very large specimens can get to up to like 7 feet, but that's not very common. About 5 feet is like more common for females. But their girth is just insane. Right now, I mean, Cleopatra is only a year and a half old and you can already see the size that she has. What's crazy is to see the growth. If you guys go back to my Meet My Pets video that I did, my very first video that I ever did, I think it was about 6-7 months ago. And if you guys go back to that video and just see the size difference between her then and her now, it's just incredible the how fast these snakes grow. It really, really is. And if you go back to, I'll put a picture up of when I first got her, when she was only 4 months old, until now, a year later. It's just, I used to be able to hold her in one hand and she was barely bigger than my palm. Like, that's it. And now look at her. Can barely hold her with 2 hands. Pretty soon I'm gonna have to put you around my shoulders, huh? Before I go any further, I just wanna say, will you please do a brother a favor and hit that subscribe button. Just give it a little click. It's not gonna hurt and it will ensure that you guys don't miss out on any new videos, and I would greatly appreciate it. So another name for blood pythons is the short-tailed pythons, and it can get a little confusing. I know at least I was confused at the beginning. There's 3 types of blood pythons. So there's the blood python brongersmai, and trust me, I might butcher these scientific names. I'm just letting you know. There's the Borneo blood. And then there is the Sumatran short-tailed python, which is Python curtis. So Cleopatra here, she is the Python brongersmai, just the blood python. She's not a Borneo blood or a Sumatran short-tailed. There's really not much difference except for the colorations. The Sumatran short-tails are one of my favorites just because they have a black coloration. They have black variations. But blood pythons are just very beautiful snakes. Cleopatra is an ivory morph, so she is not what you would see in the wild. In the wild, they have their pattern is just beautiful. They have a lot, just these deep reds and blacks Really, really, really beautiful snakes. The Sumatran shorttails tend to stay a little bit smaller than the other blood pythons, but not by much, really not by much. Instead of like 5 feet, they get more like 4.5 feet. But it really just depends on the individual. When talking to people who know about snakes, when you mention the blood python, you get a variety of different looks. Some people who are blood python enthusiasts might smile and say they are some of the greatest snakes that you could possibly own. But then there's the other people who talk about their reputation. And blood pythons get a very bad rap, and their reputation is not a very good one. They are known to be pretty aggressive snakes. They are known to be very defensive, and in all honesty, it's really not true. I mean, in my limited experience that I have owning a blood python, I just do not see it. And you know, after doing some research, I kind of realized why people say that they are kind of defensive, and really the history behind them is they were hunted a lot for their skin. And when they were getting brought over here to like the US and getting shipped, they were having these females in just very subpar conditions as they were being shipped and traveled. And once they got to their destination, they were a little pissed off. And so when you have these wild animals that come straight from the wild imported, they're gonna have a pretty nasty attitude. And so it takes a while for breeders to kind of breed out that aggressiveness a little bit, if you know what I mean. Like generations and generations of breeding is gonna take to get a more calm, more docile animal. Nowadays, they've been doing that for so long that they're starting to see that these snakes really aren't as bad as what people make them out to be. And I mean, from day one when I got Cleopatra, that was one of the first things this was a dream snake of mine. And that was one of the first things I read, was that they could be very aggressive snakes. I instantly wanted it even more.
What?
And so when I got Cleopatra, I was a little weary about that. But let me tell you, she has never struck at me. Not once. Never even shown signs of striking at me. She does kind of hiss a little bit when I take her out of the cage, but I'm never worried about her striking at me at all when I'm taking her out or when I'm handling her. She is one of the snakes in my collection that I honestly trust the absolute most, and that's saying a lot. So what I will say is that in terms of temperament, I don't see it, and I think these make wonderful snakes, and I think honestly that these are probably the most underrated snake out there. You never hear about blood pythons because of their reputation, but really if you want a big snake but you don't want to have a big snake, okay, let's see if I can make that make sense. If you want a big bodied snake but you don't want it to take up a whole bunch of room, a whole wall, like something like a Burmese python or a retic would, then a blood python, in my opinion, is like the perfect snake for you because of their size. They still get a good size to where, you know, you feel like you're holding something, but at the same time, they're not getting humongous where you're afraid when you're handling it. I'll make sure I put some videos or some pictures of full-grown blood pythons so you guys can see what a full-grown adult looks like. Cleopatra's almost there, but not quite. She's still in her juvie phase a little bit. She's getting up there though. And so leading into handling, when talking about handling, that's one downside about a blood python, is the handling. They are not very good snakes to handle. As you can see, I'm doing all the work. These are not snakes that are going to sit here and wrap around you and kind of climb all over you. These snakes live on the forest floor. They don't go up, they don't do any climbing. They're really just gonna sit here. You're gonna be their tree, you're gonna be their support, and you have to make sure you support their whole body, because if you don't, they will basically just flop onto the ground. So handling can be a little difficult, and I know that once Cleopatra gets bigger, it's gonna be even harder to handle her because they don't help you at all. So that's probably like the only downside I could say about having a blood python. As far as heating goes, I read there's a lot of variations with the heating. Some people say that you need a basking spot of about 88 degrees, while others say your basking spot only needs to be about 84 degrees. I tend to keep my basking spot around 84 to 85 degrees, and the ambient temperature in the enclosure stays probably around 80 degrees, 81 degrees. These snakes like it a little bit cooler. Contrary to prior belief, I almost mixed that up. They like it a little bit cooler. People used to think they liked it really, really, really hot. That's not so much the case. And they also thought that they liked it very humid. And that is somewhat the case, but I like to keep my humidity around 60%. And when she's shedding, as she is right now, then I will bump up that humidity to about 70%. So in order to get the desired heat that you want, you can either use an under tank heater, you can use reptile heat tape, or you could use like a ceramic heat emitter or basking bulb. I wouldn't recommend the basking bulbs. Most snakes, especially blood pythons, they don't really bask. So I would recommend the under tank heater. That's what I pretty much use for almost all of my snakes. They really like the belly heat, especially blood pythons, because they're always going to be underneath the substrate, and so that belly heat they're going to be utilizing quite often. So just my recommendation, but you could heat them however you want, as long as you have the correct temperatures. Make sure you have a thermostat attached to your heater, just in case you don't want the heater to overheat and burn your snake or burn through the enclosure, whatever type of enclosure you're using. So just make sure that you always use a thermostat as well. To get the humidity where you want it, you're gonna wanna spray your tank once a day to once every other day, whatever it takes to keep that humidity up for your blood pythons. That is something that they really do need. They really need that humidity in order to thrive, and so that's not an area that you want to lack in. Enclosure size for a blood python is one of the positives about having a blood python. They barely move. Cleopatra, if you give her the right substrate, will literally bury herself underneath her substrate and I will never see her again. And so her enclosure size that she's in right now is a 4 by 2 by 2 foot enclosure. And that's perfect for her, and I don't know if she'll even ever need an upgrade. I might give her one, she might get too big for this enclosure, but in all honesty, she barely moves. Like, when I say I can leave her in one spot and come back 2 days later and check on her and she'll be in that same exact spot, I mean it. They don't move. These are ambush predators. They like to hide under the brush, hide under the leaves. If you see the wild variation, their wild coloration, it blends in perfectly with fallen leaves. And they like to sit on the forest floor and just wait for their prey to come by. As far as the type of enclosure that you should use, personally, I would recommend using like a PVC enclosure or like a vision cage. That's what I use for Cleopatra, is I have her in a vision cage. Something that will help hold that heat and hold that humidity. And PVC enclosures and vision cages tend to do that way better than glass. When she was younger, when I first got her, I had her in an all glass enclosure. I actually had her in the same enclosure that I have Mercury, my bearded dragon, in now. And that was just like it was always gonna be just like a temporary thing. And it was a real struggle to keep that humidity in there and to keep that heat the correct temperature. I really struggled with that and it was really stressful. So I recommend PVC or vision cages. Those are going to be your best bet to keep a blood python in its correct environment. The substrate for a blood python, what I use for Cleopatra is I use the Feed 'em Breeder cocoa blocks, but I also will sometimes switch in some cypress mulch. Anything that can keep humidity and give your blood python a little bit of space to kind of dig and get underneath works for them. They really like it. When I tell you they spend almost all their time underneath their substrate, I mean, if you give them enough substrate, you won't even need to buy a hide because they will be underneath the substrate the whole time. And that's one of the things that's cool about them, is that you really don't need to put much in their enclosure because they don't really utilize too much. You are going to want a fairly good sized water dish, at least one that they can put their whole body in. She doesn't tend to soak too often, but there are occasions where I have seen her in her water dish soaking. So you want to make sure that you give them a water dish that's big enough for them to soak if they feel like they need it, or if the humidity goes down or whatever. As far as feeding goes, these snakes have very slow metabolisms, and so they don't need to be fed too often. In the beginning, when they're babies, yeah, you should probably feed them once a week. But then as they get bigger and bigger, you only have to feed them a rat every other week, and then possibly every 2 to 3 weeks. Blood pythons can get overweight pretty quickly, and a lot of the blood pythons that you see online, you'll see these really massive and really big and fat blood pythons. A lot of those are overweight, so just make sure you don't overfeed your blood python. You want to make sure, when you're looking at a general rule for a lot of snakes, is you want to be able to see that spine on their back, like that spine ridge, that right there. You want to be able to see that on your snake. And no, that does not mean they're underfed. That just means they're at a good weight. I just wanted to throw that out there because a lot of people, they see these, they know blood pythons to be fat, and they see these big fat blood pythons and they go, wow. But in a lot of cases, that blood python is just being overfed, and their feeding response, they will never turn down a meal. I have yet to see Cleopatra turn down a meal. Your blood python may go a month, 2 months, possibly even 3 months. I don't know if they go that long without using the bathroom, without going to the bathroom. So no, nothing's wrong with your blood python. That's just what they do. They, for whatever reason, don't go to the bathroom until they do. And when they do, it is a mess. Oh, hell no! It goes everywhere. So just be aware of that. It does smell quite awful as well. So that's, yeah, own a blood python at your own risk. That is no fun to clean up, let me tell you. But the lucky part is you only have to clean it up once every 2 months. So so that's a positive, I guess. So blood pythons, they do have quite a bit of morphs, and their morphs are beautiful. My goal is to get a male goldeneye. I do eventually want to breed Cleopatra, but I do want to get a male goldeneye. Goldeneyes are just amazing. The matrix morph, the what is it called? Bitic or Batic, or I don't know how to pronounce it. It's beautiful. Pixel. So they have a lot of morphs, they have a lot of variety. The ivory like Cleopatra, I know she's in shed, but the ivory like Cleopatra is also very, very beautiful. When she actually sheds, she's gonna have like a lot of yellows and oranges, and just a very beautiful, beautiful coloration to her. Very white on the underneath part, and then as it gets up to the top, it gets a little bit more yellow. Super beautiful snake. And I think people are really starting to just understand them a little bit more. And I really just think that these snakes are really misunderstood. And if you kind of just spend some time with a blood python, or if you have a friend that owns a blood python, they'll probably tell you as well. They just get a bad reputation for whatever reason, and they really don't deserve it. Blood pythons are not aggressive. They're not overly bitey. Maybe as babies they might be a little bitey, but nothing too crazy. I really just think these are misunderstood snakes, and honestly, these are the most underrated snakes that there is. I honestly, I wouldn't say it's a beginner snake, but I would recommend this as a second or third snake all day, every day, for sure. I mean, these guys make amazing pets. So that is it for today's video, you guys. What did you guys think about this video? Do you guys agree with me about blood pythons? Do you guys disagree with me about blood pythons? Let me know in the comments some blood python stories that you guys have. Thank you to everybody who's been watching the videos, and thank you to everybody who's been subscribing to the channel. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. make sure you guys share this video. Bring some people over here. We got a lot of information on this channel and I would love to share it with everybody that I can. So until next time, everybody, my name is Pierce LaValle. This is Cleopatra. We are in Pierce's Planet, and remember, it's all about the reps, baby. Peace. Blood pythons are so beautiful. Oh, don't you be hissing. I'm talking about how nice you are. Don't be getting all mean on me now. Damn, girl, you getting heavy. You getting heavy. Woo. You need to lay off the rats, huh? Got a lot of junk in that trunk. So please do me that favor and hit. Ooh, a little burpage. Ugh.